I want to start with your work that you have going on Capitol Hill today. You have these appropriations packages you're trying to move forward to keep the government open right now. Want to ask you on the status on those, as well as the one specifically with the funding for DHS in there. It's gotten a lot of talk online. Are you going to be able to pass all of those together? Are you going to have to pull out the DHS funding and debate that specifically? We've heard these demands from the Democrats overnight.
Yeah, it has been interesting that 6 days ago we had an agreement for the six appropriation bills, including Department of Homeland Security, where Democrats and Republicans sat down and negotiated together to be able to figure out what would be the best for the country for Homeland Security funding. We had agreement on it. Everybody was on the dotted line. Then this week, Democrats have stepped out and said, no, our activists want us to be able to push for even more on it. I'd like to remind everybody the bill already includes things like money for body-worn cameras, de-escalation training for ICE and for Border Patrol agents. There's all kinds of things that we all agree on and say this is a reasonable thing to be able to have for our law enforcement, to make sure new recruits in their training, to make sure we get body-worn cameras. Those things are all included. Democrats have now said, no, we're going to do a government shutdown unless we get even more. And some of the things they're looking for are things that are not good for federal agents. For instance, they want a requirement that you can't wear a mask at all and be on duty. Now, that may sound like a good idea initially, and to say, okay, well, we don't like the look of federal law enforcement wearing a mask. The problem is the protesters that are surrounding them in multiple cities are snapping pictures of their faces, posting them online, then tracking their address and saying they're at work right now as an ICE agent. That means their family is home alone. We can go to their house now and go intimidate their family. That is not good. That is not right. And that shouldn't be done to any federal law enforcement, period, on it. But the reason so many of them are wearing a mask is literally to protect their own family back home from the protesters and the rioters showing up at their house. So this is a big issue that we've got to be able to work through. We've got to either have local law enforcement protecting those federal law enforcement from rioters and protesters. And I'd use the term rioters correctly because we've had multiple arrests by local law enforcement in Minnesota declaring a riot in some of these places. Or we've got to find some other way to be able to do this. So that's the ongoing conversation right now. We want federal law enforcement to be able to do its job and do it safely, and also their families not be at risk.
Sir, just yesterday we had a federal judge in Minnesota say that ICE has violated 100 court orders in less than a month. They pointed out that that is more than some agencies have violated in their entire existence. You're on the Committee for Oversight for Homeland Security. On there, we've heard from our governor in just the last week say that Americans don't like what they're seeing with ICE. So I want to ask you, do you like what you're seeing right now with immigration enforcement, and who's holding ICE accountable?
Yeah, they are going through the process of accountability, that there is already a career structure that is already there for that. So the leadership of ICE is actually going to the courts and meeting with them tomorrow to be able to walk through all these different accusations from this left-leaning court that's there. It's entirely reasonable to be able to sit down with the court, be able to establish what are all the parameters and the instructions for ICE agent operations. What we lose track of is there are thousands of operations that are happening around the country every day. Social media is focused on a few, and they're often focused on a few where you've got these very out of control protesters that are there literally running in between people that are being arrested and trying to be able to block it and cause a stir, smashing out windows, breaking tail lights, finding ways to be able to intimidate federal law enforcement. So it has been a challenge for them to be able to deal with these radical protesters that are in these communities that are sanctuary cities saying we don't want anyone arrested in our community. Well, I would tell you a lot of people in those communities don't want criminal aliens in their community. They may say, I know this family that's been here a long time. They crossed illegally 10 years ago. They've always been a good citizen. They work hard. That's a different issue for most people than folks that are criminal aliens. The first target of ICE is always identifying criminal aliens and to be able to go do that arrest. But a lot of the focus of late has been what the protesters have done around those individuals in these sanctuary cities.
So are you confident when Kristi Noem right now is Secretary of Homeland Security?
I am, actually. I know Kristi. I've had the opportunity to be able to talk to her often. For instance, we've had some FEMA grants in Oklahoma that have been years in the making that have not been turned over to Oklahoma, that we've gone through the entire process on. I was on the phone with Kristi just last week talking through those. Those FEMA grants have all been now signed off on for Oklahoma. That's very significant for Lawton, for Oklahoma City, for Shawnee, for Tulsa. There's multiple different communities where the FEMA grants have been held up for years during the Biden administration. They've finally been released. So there are key things that we're still working through. Kristi Noem is working very hard in this process. I would tell you, where there is an agent that makes a bad decision, they need to go through a review. They need to be on administrative leave. We need to have a thorough, honest investigation. But please don't identify everybody in federal law enforcement, everyone who's working hard and putting their life on the line to be able to protect Americans, and to say everyone is like someone who made a mistake or to be able to, someone mishandled a situation. Not everyone is doing that, nor should we shut down all ICE operations around the country, as we've had folks on the left say they want to abolish ICE. I completely disagree. There is still a role for federal law enforcement in this country to be able to make sure that we are still managing our streets and our communities in a way that's safe for all Americans.
Within that role, sir, are you comfortable with the tactics that you're seeing used? I mean, we've had these high-profile situations with Alex Pretti as well as with Renee Good. I know the president has been calling now for an honest investigation into this, but we've already had comments from Stephen Miller calling the man a domestic terrorist. We have had the president make comments about that they can't bring guns in there in this. Are these comments not going to jeopardize any sort of investigation into this?
Yeah, I agree with the president's first statement that we need to have an honest conversation and investigation about what actually happened in those two situations. But again, I go back to thousands of other arrests that were done well. Let me talk about the difference in two communities here. Minnesota, in their law enforcement, have said, hey, federal agents, you are on your own. You've got to manage all of these protesters that are around. When it moves to a riot, we'll actually engage. But all the protesters that swarm them, that try to be able to stop their work, they're not helping at all. Compare that to Illinois, where in Illinois, when ICE agents were actually engaged arresting criminal aliens, local law enforcement was out protecting protesters, saying you can protest on this side of the street while law enforcement's doing their work on this side of the street. And we didn't have any of these issues in Illinois. Exact same process, same kind of sanctuary cities that are in both places, but Illinois used law enforcement, local law enforcement, to keep the two groups separately. Minnesota is not doing that, and they're allowing the protesters to swarm federal law enforcement, and is causing a lot of these issues. So it is a very different set of issues that are here based on two different states that are both blue states, both have sanctuary cities, but one is saying you have the right to protest, but you can't interfere with law enforcement. The other one is saying you have the right to protest, and if you want to go interfere with federal law enforcement, violate federal law, and we'll let you do that until it's a riot.
Sir, should state prosecutors have the ability to bring charges? We've just had these two agents that were placed on leave. Should they have the ability to bring charges if they find evidence where they see that it's warranted?
Yeah, why don't we go through the whole investigation, allow a good investigation before we actually start trying to prosecute law enforcement on this. There's a long time to be able to go through. Let me give an example. The very tragic American Airlines crash with a military helicopter was a year ago in Washington, D.C. We just have the final report on that and all the details and the recommendations of what to do. For this incident, it will take months to actually go through all of the footage, to be able to go through all the details, get all the witness testimony, get that out, then make some recommendations. I'm not for jumping ahead and saying I saw 3 social media posts, so I know what happened. I'd like to be able to get all the information out and then allow prosecutions to occur if they're warranted, and allow the facts to come out either way.
Do you think that Alex Pretti was within his right to carry that firearm to the protest there that day?
Yeah, he's within his right to carry a firearm. In fact, we now have footage that a week or so before, he was carrying a firearm at a different protest when he smashed out the tail light of one of the ICE vehicles and was spitting on some of the officers. We have footage of him doing that just a week before. It was clear that he was carrying a firearm at that time as well. Federal agents pushed him back and said, you can't smash vehicles and spit on officers on it, but they allowed him to keep his firearm because that is still a legal thing to do. Now, it is a different issue if he's in that scrum with a firearm with federal law enforcement and he is reaching for it. We don't know one way or the other. We don't believe that he was, but we don't know at this point. So we're trying to be able to get the details of it. We do know he was armed when he was trying to intimidate agents before, but we don't know that scrum that was happening on the ground, what was occurring yet at that point. So let's get the facts out there. But yes, it's the Second Amendment right of individuals to be able to protect themselves.
Sir, I want to change gears to education here. We're hosting a town hall tonight. Oklahoma right now 50th in the nation in education. What would you say to parents who are concerned about our state's ability to get ourselves out of this problem?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is thank you to so many teachers and administrators that are out there. They work literally every single day to be able to educate our kids. It is a very difficult job, and I'm very grateful to so many educators, public schools, private schools, homeschool parents that actually engage, that what they're doing to invest in the next generation. Very supportive of what they're actually taking on. The second thing is this week is also school choice week. In Oklahoma, we have determined we want to have maximum choice for our parents out there, that they can choose homeschooling, they can choose private schooling, they can choose public schooling. We want all three of those to be high quality and to be done well for it. We're not achieving that at this point as a state. So the conversation now is what can be done. It's one of the top things as a priority for the governor. It's one of the top things for the legislature. They've already announced that for this session to talk about what can be done to improve, for instance, reading in our state. You've got to be able to learn to read and learn to read early. If you miss out on learning to read early, you're never going to get a good education from then on out. So it is important that we invest in kids early for their reading skills to be able to make sure they can thrive in the days ahead. So a lot that can be done, but I want to continue to encourage parents. Look at the school options that you have got. You've got lots of options in Oklahoma. Pick what is best for your specific child. And in some families, it may be different from child to child, even within the same family, and what's best at private school, public school, or homeschooling. Choose what's best for your child. And the number one issue that makes it successful for kids in education, parents. Parents reading to their kids, parents helping their kids with their homework. Teachers do a great job, but kids that thrive in education are because the parents are also engaged in helping their child thrive in education.
Sir, we have 300,000 Oklahomans on the Affordable Care Act. They are seeing very high premiums as they head into this year. Are we going to be able to get anything done to help them with that this year?
Yeah, so there are a couple different things. It gets more complicated when you talk about the Obamacare Affordable Care Act, the marketplace that's out there. Those that are at 400% of poverty and down, they're exactly the same this year as they were last year. What has changed is for individuals that are 401% of poverty and up. During the Biden administration, they lifted the cap and said anyone that wants to get subsidized insurance, even if you make $250,000 a year, you're going to get subsidized insurance on Obamacare. So that's the shift that's really out there right now. We're talking about people 401% of poverty and up. What are we going to do to get access for them for healthcare that is affordable? For that group, they have seen a tremendous increase. They might have been paying $1,000 before for insurance. Once they went on Obamacare, they were paying $62 on it. Now it's going back to $1,200, $1,400 on it, where we've seen the rate increases. So a couple of things that we're doing right now. One is trying to be able to find ways to be able to practically get down the cost of insurance for every American, not just those individuals that are in the Obamacare exchanges. We see a lot of insurance increases that are out there that are not on Obamacare, they're on other commercial insurance. We've got to figure out a way to be able to deal with that for everybody. Number two is we got to figure out why the rates are going up so much faster for Obamacare than they are in commercial insurance. In Oklahoma, over a 6-year time period, the rates for Obamacare, now they were covered up with subsidies, but the actual rates that were being paid went up 198% on Obamacare. At the same time, it went up 29% for commercial insurance. So we got to figure out why Obamacare rates are going up so much faster than commercial rates. The Biden administration was just adding more and more and more subsidies to be able to cover up the problem. But there is a real structural problem that is there that we got to be able to figure out and be able to fix. We can't just continue to throw more taxpayer dollars into that program. And the third thing is we got to figure out how to not do more subsidies for people that are higher income. We got folks that work at a convenience store that are actually subsidizing the person who owns the convenience store and their health insurance because of the uncapped subsidies that are there. So we got to be able to figure out how to be able to cover this in a way that actually works for everybody. So yes, ongoing conversations are still happening on it and trying to be able to figure out how to be able to balance out and get good rates for everybody.